Please welcome our MC this morning, from WGRZ TV in Buffalo, Claudine Ewing.
Good morning, and it is my pleasure to be back with you all this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special celebration and of the person and the philosophy that was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Today's event is coming to you from the Egg Performing Arts Center in Albany with the gracious support of the New York State Media Services Center. We are being seen on CUNY TV in New York City and the web in upstate New York. On behalf of everyone here, including my viewers in Buffalo, New York, we thank you for including us in your holiday celebration. And if you'd like to share your thoughts or images of this wonderful event, please share through social media using the hashtag NYSMLK. I'll repeat that, NYSMLK on all social media platforms. This year's commemorative theme for today, provided by the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia, is the beloved community, the fierce urgency of now. During his 1967 speech in April, Beyond Vietnam speech, Dr. King said, "We are now faced with the fact, my friends, that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. Procrastination is still the thief of time. Life often leaves us standing bare, naked, and dejected with a lost opportunity. The tide of the affairs of men does not remain at flood, it ebbs. We may cry out desperately for time to pause in her passage, but time is adamant to every plea and rushes on. Over the bleached bones and jumbled residues of numerous civilizations are written the pathetic words, too late. These words are a reminder to us that we must all act now to end injustice, educational and economic inequality, and hatred. At this time, I would like to introduce Reuben McDaniel III, Acting President and Chief Executive Officer, for the call to commemoration.
Good morning. It is an honor and privilege to be with you this afternoon to celebrate this special day and to speak on behalf of our Governor, Andrew M. Cuomo. In my brief tenure as acting president and CEO of DASNY, I have been overwhelmed by a feeling of welcome. Less than 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of listening to the governor at his State of the State address. And in it, he said, "There is no place for hate in our state. We have zero tolerance for racism, discrimination, or ugly stereotyping. When someone attacks one of us, they attack each of us, and they attack all of us." In New York, we do stand united, and I'm proud to be standing here today representing a state that continues to take hold of steps toward equal opportunity, fighting for justice, equality, and social change. You heard a quote from a 1967 sermon from Dr. King. The lines after "too late" were, "There is an invisible book of life that faithfully records our vigilance or our neglect."
Always living with the threat of death ahead. So folks, you better stop and think, 'cause we're headed for the brink. What would happen now that the King of Love is dead?
but it seems a good die young. I just looked around and he's gone.
Has anybody here seen my good friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? Oh, he freed a lot of people, but it seems the good die young. I just looked around and he was gone. I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running. Ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will.
It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there, oh, beyond the sky. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come.
Lift every voice and sing till let the heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, your new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Let's march on.
Let's march on.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Spectrum News, Jody Canning.
Hi! Oh my goodness, what an exciting day. Well, at the heart of all that civilization has meant and developed is community, the mutually cooperative and voluntary venture of a man, to assume a semblance of responsibility for his brother. The Paul Robeson Theater, it's housed in the African American Cultural Center in Buffalo. It has been around since 1968. And through the arts, this organization, this small theater, really makes a huge difference in bringing together children, adults, and the community as a whole to lift up and enlighten people. Their programs exemplify Dr. King's message of hope and, of course, community by shaping, molding, and preparing our children for a better and brighter future. Now, here's a look at how they are living Dr. King's dream through theater and community.
This theater is a place for creative expression. It's a place of comfort and cultural enrichment. You know, this is where they learn more about their heritage.
The Paul Robeson Theater is a focal point on the east side of Buffalo. It's just an amazing place. I wish they had a place like this in every urban city in the United States of America.
Ma, get it straightened out.
I just don't want no trouble about these songs. These ain't the songs Ma told me. Ma told me something else.
In this theater, you're going to see people that look like you on the stage. So I think that is the biggest impact on the youth, particularly in my opinion, and as well as adults too. It's just a place where you come and feel like you're welcome.
This community not only captures the stories of African Americans and produces the work of African American playwrights, but it gives all of us here to have, in our community, to have a voice.
Take me up, Lord, take me up. I need you right now, oh God. I need you, oh Lord.
The stories that are told here at the Paul Robeson Theater are stories that look like and reflect the community.
What is created on the stage through words and actions, it builds community. It opens perspectives. It makes you think.
For the children, it helps to build their self-esteem. It helps them with their communication skills.
The village model that we have, the importance of community and relying on each other to create friendships and relationships and to keep people on track of diversity and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to succeed.
The greatest overall lesson that this community center gives us, that this theater allows us, opportunity for self-expression.
Had him stretched through the cuffs on that man. I ain't seen that dude since.
You have a right to be as proud, as powerful in your pride, as expressive in your pride as you have been God-gifted to do. Martin Luther King said something like this, which has stayed with me all of my life. He said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The reason that that's so important to me is because I know that if we work together as community, we can really overcome just about any kind of thing that pushes against us as a people.
He used his life, his passion, to give back and to build community, to unify people, to come together, regardless of whatever. We are human, that's what connects us.
When we're in a predicament where there is controversy, how do we stand up in those times? And that's when your true character comes through. It's the real person comes through in those heated moments, and that's when you can tell what type of cloth you're cut from.
Would you please welcome, from WBLS in New York City, Community Affairs Director Bob Lee.
Hello, hello, hello. You know, one of the greatest messages from Dr. King was the message of purpose. What can each of us do to make a difference? During a speech in 1967, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. made the strong statement about this. As a young slave boy stood one day before the greatest ruler of his day, and God said to Moses, "What's in your hand?"
And Moses said, Lord, I've only got a stick, and that's all. He goes by the name of Jesse J. Holland. Yeah.
Good morning. I bring you greetings from Washington, D.C., where I'm the Saturday host of Washington Journal on C-SPAN, which I know everyone watches at 7 o'clock on Saturday mornings, right? I also bring you greetings from the Library of Congress and librarian Carla Hayden, where I also serve as Distinguished Visiting Scholar in Residence at the John W. Kluge Center. Now, this is an unusual MLK Day for me because normally I am with my wife, Carol, and my children, Rita and Jamie, at the National MLK Monument in Washington, D.C., where we have been every year since it opened in 2011. And my wife is actually out there with my children right now. So the show goes on. But we take our children there to remind them that this day is not a day off. It is a day on. Because after we visit the monument, we start our volunteer activities. Because this day is more than just about remembering a man. It's about remembering his work. It's also a day of remembrance and appreciation, not just for Dr. King, but for other people like Coretta Scott King, John Lewis, A. Philip Randolph, Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm, and all of those who came before us and sacrificed to make sure we have a country where we can strive to be a more perfect union. We celebrate Dr. King today, but in celebrating him, we also remember the others, known and unknown, who struggled and sacrificed to make Dr. King's dream more of a reality. Now, I have to tell you that I am happy to be back in Albany in the upstate region. I actually lived here in 1999 and 2000, right on the Hudson River in Waterford, New York, near Lock Number 1. It was here I discovered that a rear-wheel drive, standard shift, sports car wasn't the best thing to drive in the snow. And you don't know how happy I was to see that the snow was here waiting for me when I got back yesterday. Because in D.C., when we hear word of a snowflake, we head to the store, pick up bread and milk, and we hunker down until that snowflake goes away. We're not like Albany, where the show goes on. So we are here today to commemorate and celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on a day which I like to consider the informal beginning of Black History Month. Starting today through the end of February, the United States will celebrate and commemorate African American history, starting appropriately with Dr. King, but expanding to include other notable African Americans and their stories, including Albany's own Sergeant Henry Johnson, whose courage and skill earned him posthumously the Medal of Honor bestowed by President Barack Obama in 2015. But not just him, Stephen and Harriet Myers, former slaves who turned their Albany home into a stop on the Underground Railroad and helped free African Americans for more than 3 decades in the face of laws like the Fugitive Slave Act. When Stephen Myers died, a newspaper described him like this: Mr. Myers did more for his people than any other colored man living, not excepting Frederick Douglass. Now, Dr. King would appreciate being remembered, but I think he would also want recognition of people like Sergeant Johnson and the Myers, the people who paved the way for him and for us today, allowing us as Americans to evolve to the point where we can celebrate Dr. King and his dream. Now, I love talking about people like the Myers and Sergeant Johnson because my passion is hidden African American history. My research project at the Library of Congress now is about a lost African American city called Freedmen's Village, which was a town of 3,300 freed slaves, United States colored troops, and free African Americans that sat overlooking Washington, D.C., where Arlington National Cemetery is today. These stories are the stories that make us who we are. Like was said earlier, my first two books involved finding those stories and bringing them to the public. Black Men Built the Capitol, discovering African American history in and around Washington, D.C., and The Invisibles, the untold story of African American slaves in the White House. So you can see where my interest lies. But in addition to writing African American history, I also been lucky enough to be involved in two of the largest movie franchises in American history, Star Wars and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For Star Wars, Lucasfilm came to me and asked me to help them craft a story for one of their newest characters, Finn, that would help explain why he was so important to that story. I was lucky enough to then be brought in by Marvel to write the first novel featuring the first black superhero, the Black Panther. Now, this novel debuted before the movie and helped introduce T'Challa and Wakanda to the world of literature, just as Ryan Coogler introduced him to the world of cinema. Now, the Black Panther franchise changed the world, shattering the common knowledge that blacks couldn't be heroes, that we couldn't lead a major movie. For years, we were told that our heroes in comic books, in fiction, in real life, had to be white and male. Now, it's interesting to see that not only as the Black Panther changed the world of comics, so did Martin Luther King Jr. Now, you may not know this. As inspiring as he was as a real live human being, Dr. King also inspired through a comic book. In 1957, a group called the Fellowship of Reconciliation, which had played a major role in the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycotts, decided that they wanted a comic book to help spread their message. So they commissioned a comic book starring Martin Luther King Jr. and the Montgomery bus boycott. They printed 250,000 copies of this comic book, and they distributed it around the United States in bus stops, schools, churches, civil rights groups, anywhere that they thought Dr. King's message should be heard. Well, according to my friend Andrew Aiden, who co-wrote the seminal graphic novel March with Congressman John Lewis, a copy of that comic book found its way to Greensboro, North Carolina, and into the hands of 18-year-old North Carolina A&T student Ezell Blair. After reading it, Blair decided to show it to his roommate, Joseph McNeil. The two students have been in contact with local North Carolina civil rights activists, but as the story goes, when McNeil finished reading that comic book, he made a decision of historic importance, saying, let's have a boycott. These two men gathered two friends and went down to Woolsworth in Greensboro, North Carolina, and said, we must be served, beginning the Greensboro-Woolworth sit-in. That sit-in goes on to become one of the most famous civil rights actions. 1 week after they started their sit-in, other students in North Carolina start sitting in stores. It then spread to Virginia, Tennessee, and all around the South. And eventually, because of those two men and that comic book, Woolsworth desegregated. In all, more than 70,000 people in the South participated in sit-ins at swimming pools, lunch counters, libraries, bus stations, museums, art galleries. And it was all because of that comic book and an inspirational man, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, Dr. King talked about having a dream. His enduring speech at the Lincoln Memorial demanded racial justice. In that speech, Dr. King was clear that not enough had been done, saying African Americans were still badly crippled by the manacles of segregation and by the chains of discrimination. 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, African Americans, Dr. King said, still lived on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. The key message in the speech was that all people are created equal. And although not the case in America at that time, Dr. King felt that it had to be the case in the future. Well, has Dr. King's dream come true? Do children live in a nation where they are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character? Can the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners sit down at the table of brotherhood? Have states like my birthplace of Mississippi or Alabama or even, yes, New York been transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice? Or has Dr. King's dream been deferred? The answer? Maybe. Things have gotten better. I am always happy when I see my children playing with their friends and realize that they are people of all colors, creeds, races, and religions. We've had black mayors, black congressmen, black senators, black governors, and even an African-American president. African Americans are now featured in all parts of American lives, from sports to literature to cinema to higher education. There has been advancement in some areas. In others, Dr. King would have to say his dream has been deferred. According to the National Center of Education Statistics, in 2016, the percentage of children under 18 in families living in poverty were higher for African Americans than for Asians, whites, and Hispanics. A higher percentage of black students are given out-of-school suspensions than any other racial or ethnic group. In 2016, the unemployment rate among adults ages 25 to 64 were higher for blacks than for anyone else except Native Americans. In 2018, hate crimes reached a 16-year high, according to the FBI. And that comes even with experts saying more than half of hate crimes are never even reported. And here's something that may or may not surprise you, but it's sometimes good to have scientific data that backs up common sense. A University of California, Riverside professor published a paper in December crunching the hate crime data. And he found out that U.S. counties that had the highest percentage of slaves 150 years ago are the same counties that have the highest percentage of hate crimes today. And people wonder why we haven't gotten over slavery or why history matters. We have to talk about incarceration. As a result of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution entering chattel slavery, America opened up a new form of involuntary servitude for those who have been convicted of a crime. Following the enactment of the 13th Amendment, prisons went from having an almost all-white incarceration to an almost all-black. According to the Pew Research Center, in 2017, blacks represented 12% of the population of the United States, but 33% of the incarcerated population, prison population. Another way to look at this would be by rate. So in 2017, there were 1,549 black prisoners for every 100,000 black adults, 6 times the imprisonment rate for whites, and double the imprisonment rate for Hispanics. And all of this is despite the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics saying that whites were more likely than blacks to have contact with the police. We have to talk about voting. In 1963, Dr. King said, "We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has no reason to vote." There seems to be a movement to ensure that fewer people make it to the polls for the next election instead of more. Why is this? Well, among 18 and 29-year-olds, voter turnout went from 20% in 2014 to 36% in 2018. Black turnout went up 11%. Hispanic turnout went up 13%. The fact that we have to talk about voter suppression in 2020, years after having triumphed over the grandfather clause, literacy tests, poll taxes, is a shame. So as you can see, not all of Dr. King's dreams have come true. Some of his dreams have been deferred. But the fact that you are here listening to me today gives me hope that no matter what our politics, our race, our gender, or our religion, you are here because you believe that Dr. King's dreams are still good. Even though we don't have Dr. King to lead us today, we still have men and women of character and courage willing to step up and take the reins of justice and morality and take the steps to lead us up toward Dr. King's mountaintop. Dr. King knew that deferring a dream could lead to a reckoning. Deferred dreams have unintended consequences, innocent victims, and a legacy of betrayal. Instead, our dreams, like Dr. King's, need to be defiant. When we dream defiant dreams, we arise determined to make a difference. Dr. King said his dream was that one day our nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We may not be all the way there yet, but the dream is still good. And dreams that defy our current reality, the status quo, and conventional wisdom are the only dreams worth having. Thank you.
Once again, please welcome Claudine Ewin.
Was he not wonderful and insightful? I would say so. While life can be hard, faith is that knowledge deep down inside that things will get better. Without faith, we couldn't expect that things would turn out all right for us, no matter what the situation might be. As Dr. King put it, faith is taking the first step even when you can't see the whole staircase. Our next performer today is all about that faith, Ms. Anita Wilson, a Grammy-nominated gospel singer, songwriter, and music executive. Wilson first emerged as a solo recording artist in 2011 with the soulful ballad, Speechless. After this, Wilson allowed her passion for God, music, and creative freedom to mark out a custom and relevant lane to much success. Her next 3 albums were all Grammy-nominated for Best Gospel Album and proved to be timeless bodies of work. And so please join me right now in welcoming, accompanied by Rick Robinson, Ms. Anita Wilson.
Good morning. It's such an honor to be here today to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King. Can someone help me come and loosen this, please? To celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King, we've come so far. Yeah, see? Need some elbow grease. There we go. Yeah, a little more if you can, please. Yes. Okay, thank you, thank you. It's an honor to be here today to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King. We've obviously come so far since he was on the battlefield, but we have so far to go. But as the gentleman just said, just the fact that we're here today says that his work was not in vain, and there are remnants and pieces of his dream that are being realized. And we thank God for the work that we've seen God doing down through the years. Are we grateful for that today? I'm grateful for that today. This first song that I want to sing, it simply says, I've seen him work so many times on this journey of faith. If there are any people of faith out there, make some noise. I can't see you. I want to hear you. Yeah, it's not always the easiest journey. You have to remind yourself that God did it before. He can do it again. There's nothing too hard for him. And even though what I see is not matching up with what I'm believing God for, we serve the God who formed the mountains and the wind. He told the heavens where to begin. So whatever your situation you're facing that you think is too hard, it may be too hard for you, but nothing is too hard for God. Go on and say, I've seen him work. I've seen him work. Put your hands together, y'all. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Sometimes you wonder why the troubles of life seem to weigh you down. Well, I found a friend that I highly recommend. He will stick closer than a brother, and he'll love you like no other, yeah. Even though what you see doesn't match what you believe, hold on, wait and see. Remember that God is working it out for you. Everything that you're going through, don't you let it worry you. Yeah, hey, he's everything I need and more. Please allow me to encourage you to get ready for your breakthrough. Are you been waiting a long time, hey, to see all your prayers, hopes, and dreams become a reality? Well, let me encourage you. You do what you do, yeah, and just let God do the rest. It's a decision you won't regret, no, even though what you see doesn't match what you believe. Oh, yeah. He's working it out for you. Hey, yeah. Come on, clap your hands, everybody. Everything that you're going through, don't you let it worry you. Yeah, hey. He's everything I need and more. Please allow me to encourage you to get ready for your breakthrough. Grab a hold. Don't you ever let go, no. God, he's in control. Oh, just grab a hold. Oh, don't you ever let go. I've seen him, say it. I've seen him. Hey, come on. Everybody say, I've seen him work. Have you seen the Lord work in your life? It's all right to be a witness today. Hey, I've seen him work. Hey, I'm reminded of a time, y'all, when I made some bad decisions. God pulled me out, oh, like only
He could. When I felt like I was gonna lose my mind, he gave me a peace I couldn't explain if I tried. Hey, I remember a time when I felt like giving up, but I'm still standing. Oh, you're still standing. When my back was against the wall, oh, you rescued me and he set me free. Hey, he protected me, hey, from the trap of the enemy. He covered me. Yes, yeah. Woo! Whatever you need, God did it before. Oh, and I believe God is gonna do it again. There is nothing too hard for God, no. Just stand still and see his salvation. Hey, I've seen him. Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Thank y'all. I have seen God working every day of my life. Sometimes we're waiting on like big miracles from God, right? Big stuff, or what people consider big things. But I honestly think it's something big that we woke up this morning.